Cool. Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm Nick. Super happy to have Ruth on board from Deezer with me here.
Hey guys.
We're going to take a second and wait for everyone to arrive so we can get started, but can see people are joining. But in the meantime, I would love to learn a bit about everyone who's joining today. So I'm going to drop a couple of quick polls here to learn about kind of who you are, if you're an artist, a record label, or what genre represents your music, and yeah, get an idea of our community here today. Awesome. Looks like we have some fair bit of you already distributing with iMusician, some who are just getting started. This is great. Some of you with another distributor as well. Also happy to have you on board here today. All genres. As you can imagine, we're going to cover all the material we're going to cover is applicable to any genre, but cool to have a wide array of you here. A lot of artists, some record labels, maybe some artists who manage their own record labels here today. So we'll be covering stuff that applies to everyone there. We'll give everybody about another minute here to hop on, and then we'll get started.
Really cool to see so many artists and so many different genres.
I'm sure a lot of you could put an answer on multiple genres here, so sorry to confine you to 5. Yeah, about another minute here, but this will be our second webinar here with iMusician. Our first one was about Spotify a few months ago, and if you haven't already checked that one out, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel and dive into that. I'm going to share the link here in the chat in case you want to bookmark that for later. There you go. So a lot of useful tools there. We dive deep into Spotify for artists, how to get the most out of the platform for record labels, and really just an overall dive into how to get the most out of Spotify and put an entire complete promotional package around your release. Similar to what we're going to be doing today for Deezer, but as you can imagine, it's good to have an overview of multiple platforms as you begin to put your releases together. So highly recommend checking that out. And yeah, let's get started. So a little intro today. I'm Nick. I'm a country manager for the North American and UK regions for iMusician, and am responsible for building and growing the iMusician community and supporting our community of independent artists. And before joining iMusician, I've had 5 years of experience working in the music industry in the US and graduated university with a degree in music business. And super happy to share my passion for helping independent musicians with the iMusician community through tools like this webinar and collaborations with like-minded teams like Deezer. And on that note, again, super happy to have Ruth from Deezer on board with us today. And I'll pass over to her so she can introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Nick. And hi, everyone. Really pleased to be here today to talk to you guys a bit more about Deezer. But first, a bit about me. I'm Ruth. I joined Deezer about 18 months ago now. And before that, I was working at an indie label called Glassnote Records. I work out of Deezer's London office, and I work in the global artist marketing team here. My job specifically is overseeing the relationship with indie labels and providers. A big part of what we do in my team is act as an interface between artists and their teams, and our editorial team, who are curating all of our global and local playlists. So we oversee the pitching process. We make sure all of your releases end up in the hands of the relevant editor. And we also run any marketing initiatives with artists that go beyond just playlisting. So anything from sessions, events, interviews, takeovers. There's so many different ways that Deezer can support artists and help connect them with their fans. And it's my job and the job of my team to make that happen. So yeah, happy to be here. Let's get started.
Cool. Yeah, super, again, happy to have Ruth here. And we're not alone as well. We're here with my colleagues Alice and Leah, who are behind the scenes. If you have any questions that pop up throughout the webinar, just drop them in the demo chat here. If you're watching on Facebook, you can leave them in the comments below. Or if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment in the section down there, and we will get back to you ASAP. And for those of you who aren't familiar with iMusician, I saw that we have some people who are distributing, but a fair amount of you who aren't. So let's give you a brief background. We're an online music distributor created by and for independent musicians. And we got started all the way back in 1999 when our co-founder and COO, Toby Verts, founded the electronic music label SOG Records. And shortly after that, in 2002, Toby's friend Shigs Amemia, our CEO and fellow co-founder, joined him as label manager. And as they found their way through the music industry, essentially working out of their attic, they started to help their friends. And a few years later, in 2010, they decided to create iMusician as a way to help independent artists and labels find success in the music industry. And that all started with digital music distribution. So in addition to helping indie artists and labels put their music on platforms around the world, we also offer online mastering and monetization on YouTube through YouTube's Content ID system. We work every day to help indie artists in their career, either through our products, our advice, or like today through tools like webinars, guides, and the materials that we release on our blog throughout the year. We're a community of over 200,000 artists and labels, some of whom are joining us here today. Super happy to have you. And we distribute on streaming and download platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and we're one of the only distributors to distribute music to electronic stores like Beatport, TrackSource, Juno Download, and many others. But most importantly, we distribute to Deezer, which is why we're here today. So Deezer offers many features for artists to take control of their music and on the platform and to integrate Deezer into their overall development strategy. So for artists today, it's not as simple as just publishing your music and waiting for it to go into playlists. While playlists are very important, these steps must be integrated into a Deezer-specific strategy to build, understand, and develop a community of followers on the platform using all the tools that Deezer makes available to you, which we'll be diving into in depth today. At first, it might sound like a lot, but especially when your main focus is focusing on your music and spending time on that. But don't worry, we're here to break it down bit by bit and make it easy to wrap your head around. So some of the things we're going to be covering today, we'll give you an introduction to Deezer and its importance for artists and labels. We'll dive into Deezer Backstage and show you how to claim and customize your artist profile. We'll show you how to discover and better understand Deezer playlists. We'll dive deep into that. Give you examples of the possibilities that Deezer offers artists to gain more visibility and new followers. And we'll walk you through how to submit your songs to unofficial playlists, which, as many of you are probably aware, is becoming an ever more valuable outlet for artists. And lastly, we'll show you how to create your own playlists and work on your release strategy to further your career. Before we do that and before we dive in, I want to let you know that we recently published a Deezer guide for artists and labels. This guide is a true Deezer primer for music projects at any level, regardless of your experience with the platform, and is a really nice complement to this webinar. So for anyone who wants to learn more and go a little deeper, I encourage you to check it out or bookmark it for later. I'm going to share it in the chat here in a second. There it is. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, we'll have that link in the comments on Facebook. That will be in the comments there as well. As mentioned before, feel free to leave your comments and questions in the chat. Like I said, Alice and Leah are working behind the scenes, and they'll answer any questions that you have between sections. We'll also open up the floor at the end for a brief Q&A to wrap things up. And with that said, let's dive right in, and I'll pass the mic to Ruth to kick things off with an intro to Deezer.
Thanks, Nick. And yeah, a super quick introduction to Deezer from me. starting things off in the simplest terms, in that Deezer is a streaming platform. We offer an incredibly large and diverse catalogue of music and podcasts to our user base. Deezer was founded in Paris, France in 2007, and was definitely one of the pioneers of the streaming model as we know it today. Fast forward to now, to 2021, and every month we connect our 16 million active users from around the world to a catalogue of over 73 million tracks, and a constantly growing pool of amazing podcast content as well. So I think people sometimes think that Deezer is a purely French company, and definitely it's true that France remains one of our key markets. It's our home market and where our headquarters are. But Deezer is actually available in over 180 countries worldwide. Undoubtedly has one of the most diverse catalogues, and we have a real focus on championing local music and homegrown talent in all of our markets. So talking of key markets, aside from France, other really important territories for us are Brazil and the rest of Latin America, where we have a really strong and growing presence. The MENAT region, Middle East, North Africa, Turkey, again, is a super important region for us right now, and one that's growing. And then coming back to Europe, France, Germany, UK, all super important territories for us as well. So that's a really very brief rundown of who we are and where we are in terms of global footprint. And I'll hand back to Nick to talk some more.
Cool. So thanks for that. You'll obviously, that's a brief intro, but as we dive into it, you'll be able to get a better overview of everything that Deezer has to offer. It's obviously has a big footprint in Europe and throughout the world. So it's a huge tool for artists as you begin to develop your strategy. So why is Deezer important for artists and labels today? So to start, Deezer has a huge number of music fans who are waiting to discover your song. And today, it's not just about getting on Deezer playlists, it's also about building a fan base on the platform and getting your music into every corner of the world. The idea is to put your music where people are used to listening to it, and naturally it starts with uploading it to your desired platforms. So how do you get started? How can you, as an artist or label today, get your music on Deezer? So if you're an artist or an independent label, you're going to require the service of a digital distributor like iMusician, which will be responsible for performing quality control of your content so that it meets the requirements of Deezer as well as those of other platforms such as Spotify and Apple Music or Amazon. And since these platforms only work with multinational labels, this is where the role of the distributor comes in. And the first step for independent artists to get their music out there is to determine which stores they want to get their music into and utilize the services of the distributor to get there. So really all you need to get started are your WAV audio files, your cover art in good quality, and your metadata such as track titles, your copyrights, and the names of your contributors. That's really all you need to get going. From there, you're all set to submit your release to platforms like Deezer and Spotify and Apple. That said, be sure to keep in mind that each platform has a different set of requirements and guidelines for releases, which is why distributors like iMusician run a quality check on your files before release to ensure that releases will be distributed and accepted by all platforms and that you're able to stick with your original release date. Whenever there's issues that arise, we work tirelessly. We have a wonderful artist and label relations team that works behind the scenes. That is working day in and day out to basically make sure that all releases are released on time. So in order to make sure that you make it easy on yourself, and if you're interested in diving into some of the specifics, I'm going to share an article here in the chat that is a brief rundown of a checklist of what you need for every release. So let me share that here. There we go. Again, in the comments of both YouTube and Facebook there. So now that you have your music on Deezer, what are the next steps? And again, before we dive in, I'd love to know how many of you are familiar with Deezer Backstage. So back to that poll section where we were earlier, I'm going to ask you guys how familiar you are with Deezer so we can get an idea of basically where everyone's at before we dive into this topic. Cool. So it looks like a lot of people are new to Deezer Backstage. This is great. So we'll be diving in and explaining a lot about it and giving you an insight into the interface here shortly as well. Awesome. So on that note, let's dive right in, and I'll let Ruth take over here for a second before we dive into the Deezer interface.
Absolutely, and super interesting to see on the poll there that a lot of you haven't heard of Deezer Backstage, so hopefully this will be really insightful for you. Backstage is Deezer's dedicated tool for artists and their teams. You might have heard for Spotify for artists. I know Apple Music and Amazon have equivalents, but Backstage is Deezer's version of that tool. So whether you're a label, you're a manager, or you're an artist, Backstage has a couple of really useful features for you to take advantage of and really get stuck in with. First and foremost, it allows you to take control of and curate your artist page. And it also gives you access to all of your performance analytics. So we know having your streaming data all in one place is super useful for artists when building your campaigns. So updating your artist profile is really the most crucial first step in all of that. And I think Nick's going to show you in a minute how exactly you can do that. It's worth noting that when you distribute a release through iMusician or through another distributor, an artist profile will be automatically generated for you. And all you then need to do is claim your access and you'll be able to explore all of those features.
Cool. Yeah. So let's dive right in. As you can see, this is the landing page that you will get to when you are requesting access for Deezer Backstage. So to get started, you click on Request Access here, and you start by stating whether you're an artist, label, provider, or manager. As we'll learn, there are different elements of Backstage that are valuable to each one of these. So we'll select artist here. You can type your artist name in next there. Below that, basically, this is all pretty self-explanatory, but below that's the email, the UPC code, which is essentially the unique identifier for your release. So in iMusician, you can easily find this code in your control panel by clicking on your release. Here, you only need to enter the code assigned to a release, no matter what it is, a single EP or album. For label here, if you don't have a label, you can just enter the same name you gave to your distributor, such as your artist name. Down here, you'll enter your distributor, such as iMusician, or you'll also enter the email address. In this case, it would just be support-en@imusician.pro, probably the same for some other distributors there. Finally, down here, you would enter the links to your social media profiles. It doesn't mean your personal social media profiles. This must be your artist pages. If you haven't set up social media pages for your artist profiles, highly recommend that you do that. That's kind of a good first step before you get going with anything, so that you can interact with your fan base and promote yourself. Deezer offers the option here to link your Facebook account to speed up the process. Definitely recommended there, because it can take up to 6 weeks to validate your access. And again, that's really it. So pretty self-explanatory. All you need to finish up there is click submit. And from there, let's dive into an actual Backstage account. So for today, we'll be checking out the back end of the iMusician account here. Give it a second to load.
And I'll just add while that's loading and Nick's setting that all up, just one point from us at Deezer and why it's so important to make sure that updating your artist profile really is the first thing that you do, and that's because as an artist, you're really in control of how you display yourself. On Deezer and on other platforms. Your artist page is your space to tell your story, both to your existing fans who already love you, but also to new fans who are discovering you for the first time. So it's definitely really important to have that good first impression. And I'll hand it over to Nick to show you exactly how and what you can do on your artist page.
Cool. Yeah. So as you can see here, on the first tab, you'll be able to see the stats. We'll dive into that in a moment. But to start, let's focus on this second tab called Artist Edition. So here, we'll type in this example artist for today, Chuvapara, and that'll load up there. And this section is crucial, as your artist page is essentially how you display yourself to existing and potential fans. So it's essentially a user's first impression of you. So you really want them to get a sense of you as an artist straight away. And here you can update your artist profile. It's possible to upload your image or photo directly. As you can see here, that you have the requirements added just below to make sure that your image will be accepted. Right below that, you have this kind of social interface here, where you can add something along the lines of a single coming out soon, or an announcement in regards to your album, or a feature on a playlist. You can also link your social media accounts. And just below that, there's the highlights, which is a somewhat new feature that allows you to highlight an album, a playlist, a single, or a podcast that you're featured on. You can also choose the countries in which it'll be displayed and the start and end date. So you can do an example here. Say you're featured on a playlist. Let's go with Indie Motivation, which is a Deezer playlist. So you'd select the playlist here, click that there. Maybe you want to feature it only in the UK. So you would type in the UK here, and maybe for the next month starting on Thursday through the 1st of July. So that's all it is. You basically select the feature where your playlist or song or album is featured, select the regions in which you want to feature it, and select the dates. So create, and that's it. So again, it may take an hour or two to get going, but that's a really cool feature to add a little boost to your release. And down here below that is your biography section, which is really cool that Deezer allows you to add your biography in multiple different languages. Obviously, don't expect everyone to be fluent in English, French, Portuguese, Dutch, and German. So I'd highly recommend using tools like DeepL, which is an online translator, to customize your biography and really add a personal touch by allowing your fans to discover your story in their native language. And that's really all there is to it. That from there, you have a complete Deezer profile that allows people to discover you and allows you to be discovered on the platform. I'm going to delete that playlist so it's not featured
And
there.
if I can, Nick, just to add one thing, one tip that we suggest to artists is, I mean, all in one Backstage profile, you have your analytics available, and then you've also got this artist edition section. But why not jump from your analytics, have a look at where your top markets are, where most of your streamers are coming from, and then use that market to decide which languages you put your biography on. You know that artists are coming from Brazil, then add a Portuguese biography on there, and so forth. So that's one really cool feature that you can transfer from tab to tab.
Yeah, and to that point, so let's transfer over to the analytics tab, and convenient to mention Brazil here, as we'll dive into Chuva Para, who has a big following in Brazil. And so in the analytics tab, you have the ability to view basically all of your stats, which is great as an artist or label to know more about the plays of your music or of specific artists on your label if you're a label manager. You can see the total streams over time here. Below that, you can have this graph to view your streams and the unique number of people who have listened to you, the playlists in which you've appeared, and of course, in which countries. So sorry if I'm scrolling a little quick through here, but there's the playlist section there. And here you can see Chuva Para, main region, Brazil. So to Ruth's point, you can really get a layout of where in the world your listeners are coming from and cater your content and promotion around those listeners. So really valuable insights into your audience and fan base here. You can even see which device they're listening from, which plan on Deezer they're listening from, whether that's ad supported or if they're a subscriber. Their gender, male or female here, their age range. So really diving deep into their demographics, which is an amazing tool. And how people are listening to you as an artist. Like, are they discovering you on playlists? Are they finding you on album pages, direct from your artist page? Are they finding you through favorite tracks, flow or a mix, or through partner apps? So again, you really get an idea of how people are discovering you, where they're from, the demographics, and as you grow as an artist, you can really use these to your advantage to create a custom kind of promotional plan around each release. And highly recommend checking this out, or even setting a reminder on a weekly basis to do this around a release, so you can follow up with fans in specific regions. So beyond that, the analytics tabs and artist edition, we have the charts tab here, which is pretty self-explanatory. It is the basic charts that are broken down by track, artist, album. You can filter by country, age, and date. And as it's loading, this can be a good place to give you ideas for playlists or just for your personal listening experience. So not only is it fun to dive into Deezer as an artist, but it's great as a listener. So here you see just the top 100 tracks worldwide, a lot of big names on there, and artists, albums, and playlists. Obviously, the filters up here, you can select anywhere in the world. If you wanted to select UK or the US, you could segment by age. If you're curious what 18 to 25-year-olds are listening to, or an older demographic, or you can set by date if you're curious on a week-to-week basis what the top songs are. If you're interested in music discovery, or discovering artists within your genre that are good to study and research when it comes to potential blogs or media organizations to reach out to. Beyond that, we have the User Manager tab, which is super important as an artist or label to give access to your team and or band members. So you can give access to one or several tabs. So if you have a press agent, you can give them access to the stats part so they can have an understanding of media organizations or radio stations that they can reach out to ahead of a tour or ahead of a release. Or if you have a manager, or if you manage a record label, you can get access to different artists, or maybe access all of their tabs to get a complete view of their audience and just understand all the demographics around each artist on your label. So that's a pretty quick rundown of Backstage. And before we move on, we can take a moment. If anyone has any questions so far about Deezer or Backstage, we can open them up in the chat, and yeah, hopefully answer a few, or if not, we can just move along.
I saw one of the questions that I think Alice maybe already answered was about if you're a label and an artist, can you have multiple Backstage profiles? And the answer is yes. You might have to use a different email address. They will be separate accounts, but you can yes, have more than one. And again, if you're a manager, you can access obviously all of your roster on one account as well. So when you're claiming your access, just have a look at the different options in the form and select the relevant one.
Awesome. So yeah, it looks like everybody has had their questions answered by our awesome team Backstage. So let's move along. So now that we've covered the basics, your artist profile is complete. You've understood what your audience is like, and you've analyzed your performance. Basically, let's move on to the heart of the matter, which is your income as an artist and a label. So first, a quick reminder of the two types of rights you can earn through Deezer. They're pretty much the same on all platforms, but the first are composition rights. So these refer to revenues from mechanical reproduction and public performance royalties, and are paid to the lyricist, the composer, and publisher of each song through a collection society such as Sound Exchange if you're in the US, or PRS if you're in the UK. There are a few others, but those are the main two. An example of a public performance would be when a song is sung or played on radio and television, or as well as through other media outlets such as the internet or live concerts. And organizations grant licenses to perform or broadcast music from its repertoire to users of music in public spaces such as radio and TV stations, hotels, clubs, restaurants, stores. Basically, if you go into a public space and hear someone's music being played, royalties can be earned from that. A mechanical right is the right to reproduce a piece of music onto CDs, DVDs, records, or tapes. And when a reproduction of music is made onto a soundtrack of a film or a TV show, the reproduction is called synchronization, and the license the TV or film producer needs to obtain is called a sync license. Again, we could do an entire webinar on this stuff, so doing a pretty brief rundown of royalties. The second type of rights that you will generate income from are master rights. These revenues refer to revenues generated from the streams of your music. So these are paid out by Deezer and other streaming services to your label or distributors like iMusician, and then we pass that revenue on to you. So to that point, we can dive a little bit deeper into this in our blog. So I'll share the link to that. Chapter 2 of our Deezer guide, where if you're interested in going a bit more into mechanical reproduction and public performance royalties, you can bookmark that for later. There that is. Again, we could go on all day about that, so for the sake of brevity, we'll move on. And Ruth, I'll let you take it from here to explain Deezer's innovative payout initiative for artists as we move forward.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. And I'll come on to the UCPS initiative in just a minute. But first, on this slide, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the current system. So right now on Deezer and most global streaming services, royalties are allocated based on a market share model, what we call a market share model. And this means that artists are paid based on the overall market share of streams on the platform. And as you can see by the diagram here, in this model, the distribution of royalties doesn't directly relate to the listens of each user. So if you pay your €10 per month subscription fee and you only listen to your one favorite artist, you might assume that all of that money is going directly to that artist, but that actually isn't the case. In reality, the artists who are benefiting are the ones who are accumulating a much bigger chunk of the total streams consumed on Deezer. So this market share model is very good news for the artists at the top and the genres at the top. The Ariana Grandes and Taylor Swifts and Drakes of the world are benefiting massively from this market share model of royalty payout. But the ones who lose out are independent artists like many of yourselves, artists performing genres that are maybe slightly smaller or more niche. And back in 2017, Deezer sort of took a stand on this and said that the system needed to be changed to something more fair for artists across all levels. So the user-centric payment system, or shortly referred to as UCPS, is, like I said, an initiative that we kicked off back in 2017. And essentially, a user-centric model would restructure the way that we allocate royalties. Rather than it being based on overall market share, this approach would allocate royalties based directly on each listener's streams. In really simple terms, the money you pay goes directly to the artists that you love and that you choose to listen to. So I think we all agree that supporting artists directly that we love is something that we would prefer from a royalty model. And this is something that Deezer, again, has been pushing for since 2017. But unfortunately, switching to this model isn't as simple as flicking a switch. It requires a lot of buy-in from all of the key industry stakeholders. So while we've been pushing for it and we will continue to do so, just yet it hasn't been an achievable task. But rest assured, this is something that Deezer is committed to, and we hope to run a pilot of this new payment system in the near future. There's lots to read up about UCPS and the market share model, and I'm sure there's lots of resources that we can share afterwards rather than going into the specifics now. It's definitely an interesting industry debate at the moment, and one I recommend you guys looking into.
Cool. Yes, super exciting stuff on the horizon there from Deezer and the whole UCPS platform. So obviously stay tuned for all of that. We can share some resources here at the end of the webinar or in the follow-up email. So if anyone has any questions or would like those, just drop something in the chat and we'll be happy to share that. So now let's take a look at the roadmap for a successful release strategy. So as you saw in our previous slides on royalties and revenue, in order to increase your income, you will have to make yourself visible and occupy as much space as possible on the platform. So to do this, you'll need to establish a strategy for Deezer and really be proactive in ways in which you can promote your release. Our first tip here is the release of your single, EP, or album, making sure that that's at least 2 months before the release day. When it comes to releasing an album, it's important to allow time to release 1 or 2 singles before the complete work is released. Firstly, because this will allow you to submit each track individually to the platform's editorial playlists. And second, this multiplies the impact of a project. So in the digital world, attention is scarce, and with so much new music being released every day, your fans miss these isolated releases of your EP. And by amplifying your efforts, you regularly remind them that you are there, present and active. And this is why you see a lot of main artists out there releasing single after single after single, a lot of them not even releasing albums anymore, or releasing 5 singles and then an EP, and then that all becomes an album. This is all based around this strategy of having a consistent promotional push behind each release, especially when it feeds into playlists, because you're able to pitch each one of those songs to playlists, as opposed to if you just release one album, you can pick one song off of that album. So highly recommend this approach. You're seeing this more and more from artists, especially bigger artists in the music world today. So something to take note of there. Again, that way you'll be able to concentrate your promotional efforts on each pre-release, which will make each of them stronger and create buzz around your project. But of course, you will want to optimize your efforts on the platform, but you will also want to be growing your audience sustainably beyond the platform. And when it comes to content, the first channels that you can use for promotion are the ones you already manage, such as your social networks. Like I mentioned, hopefully you already have those set up. If you haven't, go do that. If you have a website, iMusician, we have a cool new tool coming out that will basically help you establish your own website and your YouTube channel. These platforms gather your most active fans, so it is important that you effectively communicate your launch there. And to do this, you are going to want to cultivate constant interaction with your fan base, which you can do by creating polls, advertising your playlists, offering exclusive content for your fans, such as pre-orders, contests, and you can create content to attract them, such as recording a video clip, creating teasers for each single. And if that seems like a lot, you can oftentimes even contract people through services like Fiverr to help you with these projects. And even when it's a low budget production, anything and any content that you can create that you can share on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, that will boost your release. And you can see with a lot of independent artists today, even lo-fi music videos have a huge impact and often take off just as well as these hugely produced videos. So something to take into consideration as you put your next release together. And once you have all this content in motion, it increases your credibility and visibility in the press during your PR campaign, which you can obviously complement by sending out an EPK or an electronic press kit, which is essentially a resume for your music that can provide media outlets, blogs, talent buyers, and more with essential information to understand who you are as an artist so that you can get noticed. Now that we're going back to concerts, EPKs are important when it comes to landing live gigs. Thank God we can go back and see live music. And EPKs are huge with making connections in the industry. So as again, like to most of these points, it's important to build your Rolodex of connections so that every release that you have coming up, you can just have this list of connections where hopefully you only have to do this big workload once. So it's easier as your releases grow and you build these connections. You can just have these people on deck where you can send emails and they'll be excited about every release that you have. So when it comes to promotions of that nature, the sooner you start, the better. And you can start even before getting going with your next release by gathering in an Excel sheet a list of media such as websites, magazines, blogs, terrestrial and internet radio stations and DJs. One in the UK is NTS or a Dublab in the US. These are both really interesting internet radio stations and have a huge amount of DJs that feature independent artists and are surprisingly receptive to people emailing them, DMing them on Instagram, messaging them on Facebook. So that's just one example, but it's a really easy tool for independent artists to get radio play, reach a large audience, and just get shouted out around the world. And you can also reach out to YouTube music channels, as YouTube is becoming an ever more important avenue for music discovery, and the platform as a whole is aiming to pay out artists more and more as they become more music-centric. So super important to keep YouTube in mind as you develop your strategy. And again, if this seems like a lot and you're curious how to get started, a good starting point is to just choose several artists. These can be your influences or like-minded artists in your community, and just look for interviews and articles about their projects, which will give you a list of media outlets that might be interested in your project or cover the genre in which you release music. And as soon as your launch date is set, you can start creating your polished press release or your EPK and send it to those media outlets. Don't worry too much if you don't get much response at first. Press relations, it can be frustrating, but like any relationship, it's built with consistency. So it's important to repeat this process for each launch, follow up with people when you email them, follow up on the DMs, and I think you'd be surprised at how many people will get back to you. Again, with most topics we're covering today, we could do a whole webinar on promotion. So we won't go into too much detail here, but for more information on promotion and to plan your strategy over time, a good roadmap to follow is this infographic that you see here, which we elaborate on in extensive detail on your website. I'm going to share the link in the chat here as well as in the description for the YouTube viewers, in the comments on Facebook as well. There, that is, again, super useful just to have that side by side as you put your release together. Great step-by-step process to ensure that you have all of your bases covered. And like I said, hopefully you only really need to do this big workload once and just get this stuff in motion for your following releases. So all these efforts will help immensely when it comes to being discovered for playlists, as editors are first and foremost music lovers. often readers of the music press, just like you and me, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call, radio listeners or forum members, and every point of exposure is an opportunity for you to be discovered by potential listeners, but also by these ever important publishers and playlisters. And to that point, I'm sure many of you are interested in this topic, so let's get right into it, playlisting. So I'll let Ruth kick this one off with an overview of the categories of Deezer playlists.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick. So, I mean, there are so many different kinds of playlists on Deezer, and like many of the topics we're covering today, we definitely don't have time to go into all of them in a lot of detail. But we've broken down 6 main brackets the playlists tend to fall under on Deezer. The first one being charts. So really simple one, and in short, these are the most streamed songs on the platform. We filter charts by country, and we also have trending charts per country, which are the most streamed, searched, and added songs. These charts playlists are updated daily and are automatically generated based on streaming data. The second one, Deezer Originals playlist. This is a super exciting one. Originals playlists are available exclusively on Deezer, and they feature tracks from multiple artists to fit a certain theme or story or project that that we want to tell. So you can think of them almost like a compilation album, multiple artists contributing to one project. And there's a couple of examples on the slide of a couple of these originals that we've run over the last couple of years. One to note is Inversion's 80s, which we launched a couple of weeks ago now. That's a project where we invited some of the most exciting alternative and indie artists to record a unique cover of an iconic 80s hit. The result was really, really special, so I can only recommend you go and check that out, and all of these playlists. And one other thing to note is that Deezer Originals come in a number of different formats. So as well as the playlist side of it, we do sessions with artists. We've got a brand new studio in our Paris HQ where we invite artists to come and record. We also have original podcasts on the platform, and you can check all of this out in our dedicated Originals channel. The third type of playlist we're going to quickly go over that we could speak about all day is the editorial playlists. These are the ones created by Deezer's in-house editorial team, and largely the ones that most artists desire to be featured in. So at Deezer, we have a team of global genre experts who, from pop to electronic to rock to rap, they curate with that said genre in mind for our users globally. And we also have global moods editors who are curating playlists for any mood or moment that you need soundtracked. So whether that's a morning chill, a lazy afternoon, or a hit workout, whatever it might be, there are playlists to soundtrack those times in your day. And then finally, as well as those global editorial playlists, we also have local editorial teams on the ground in all of our key markets who are curating playlists that are tailored specifically for the sounds and tastes of users in that one market. So whether it's sertanejo in Brazil or grime in the UK, wherever you are in the world, you will have locally relevant content available to you, as well as the global playlists as well. Next, we come on to algorithmic playlists, and these are the ones that are automatically generated for each user based on their own listening habits and their own streaming behavior. So the more music you listen to, the more artists you stream, the richer your data is, and the more our team has to work with in terms of what you're presented and recommended. We have an incredible team of data scientists who are constantly refining the algorithm to make sure that it's as relevant as possible for our users. Flow is one example of an algorithmic playlist on Deezer. It's my personal favorite. And in a Flow playlist, you'll see a mix of your old favorites, tracks that you listen to all the time, and also new tracks that you might like that have been recommended to you based on all of your previous habits. So I recommend going on Deezer and just checking out all of those algorithmic playlists. Our algorithm is super sophisticated, and I'm sure you'll discover loads of great music on there. Curator playlists. So These playlists, otherwise known as third-party playlists, are not created by us at Deezer, but by external medias. So it could be a record label, it could be a radio station, it could be a shop, it could be a distributor like iMusician. These are playlists created by external parties, and these are designed to really help those brands connect with Deezer users. It's worth noting that if this is something that you're doing or that you would like to do, you can apply for your account on Deezer to have curator status. And once that's approved by us, it means that you can see all of your playlist analytics and backstage. It also means that the playlist will be picked up by the algorithm and recommended to users. Also, I recommend checking out our curators channel on Deezer, which all of these playlists are featured in, and it's a really cool one to explore. And finally, the last type of playlist we're going to talk about today is playlists created by users. Just like me or Nick or any of you guys, you can log into Deezer, a free account or a premium account, and create a playlist and share it with the world. So this is something that us and the artist marketing team recommend to all artists that we work with, and I recommend to all artists on the call today. Create a playlist of your favorite tracks at the moment, your influences, and keep updating those regularly, because not only does it, tell fans, new and old fans, more about you and allow them to discover more about you as an artist, but also it gives them a reason to keep coming back to your page. So I think Nick's going to show you in a minute how exactly you can create a playlist on your own account, but that's definitely something that we recommend to all artists that we work with.
Yeah, so thanks again for that, the breakdown. Again, like she said, super brief overview of everything, but you can get an idea of the different playlists that are available to you on Deezer and the value you can have by making it onto any of those. So those are obviously great as a user, but as an artist, how do you take advantage of them? And so here are a few tips to dive into. Many of Deezer's unofficial playlists are user-created playlists. So if you find a playlist that interests you and you think you have a good chance of being featured, there are a few tips on how to get in touch with those selectors. First of all, you'll be able to search by genre, find a bunch of playlists, and you'll be able to analyze them one by one to see if they might be interesting for the genre in which you're producing music. If you're interested in a playlist, be sure to look in the description for a link or an email address to contact the curator to propose via email or direct message an introduction to your music, kind of harking back to the same way in which you reach out to artists or for PR. I think you'd be surprised at the amount of people that will reach out and follow up with you when it comes to being featured on your playlist. They're big music nerds, so they enjoy hearing different tracks from independent artists. If no contact information is included under the playlist name, you can look at the name of the selector and try to find them on a social network like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even YouTube, for example, or on their official website. More often than not, they will have an email or a way to DM them on any of those channels. Another great tool for artists is SoundPlate, which is a service that will send your music to Spotify and Deezer playlists. This is a great resource for discovering playlists of all genres, along with information on how to submit your music, and it's just super easy to use. So highly recommend that. We will be sure to share a link to that at the end of here, as well as in the follow-up email, again, in the comments on Facebook and YouTube. And furthermore, as a music distributor, iMusician, we also feature many of the artists who distribute music with us on our playlists. And we're always happy to hear and feature music from our community on our Deezer playlists and would love to hear from you. I'm going to share a link here shortly to show you some of our playlists. As you can see, we have a wide array of genres that we cover. So this is just a brief overview. We have even more than these, but we love featuring and hearing from the artists within our community. So if you have a new release coming up, be sure to bookmark this link that I'll share in the chat here. There we go. So yeah, we have a whole team that curates our playlists. I'm sure this is a topic of interest for a lot of you here today. So we love hearing from our artist community. And as you can see, really whatever genre you produce music in, we have a way to feature you. So we'd love to hear from you. Highly recommend bookmarking this along with other channels like SoundPlate. You can check out our blog as well. We have numerous articles on different curators for each genre, and really just try and break it down and make it as easy for you as possible when it comes to getting featured on playlists. So another example of a playlist, we'll dive into one that you could, for instance, reach out to if you're interested in UK grime. Clearly, that's a recurring genre for both me and Ruth here. You can find playlists like this one here. So this would be UK rap by a group called Dose. So as you can see, they have a bunch of hits from all across the UK grime genre. I'm sure there's some independent artists in here as well, which is a great way if you're creating your own playlist to not only feature your own music, but if you're a record label to put people onto your artists. So you can feature big name artists that will draw people into your playlist, but as they'll be out and about going about their day or listening to music in the gym or just at home, they will be going through the rest of the songs in the playlist and discovering you or discovering the people on your label. And it's really just a great way to share your musical tastes and your own songs, and is a great way to connect with your fans so that they get to know a little bit more about you through your music and your music taste. You can also create playlists with tracks that have inspired to create your EP or album. I've seen this with some of the artists on our iMusician community, and it's a super interesting and creative way to promote your album leading up to your release, giving your fans a bit more an in-depth dive into what your inspirations are. You can create interesting artwork, and really it's just another piece of content that you can create to push out on all of your channels, harking back to making it easy on yourself so that you can focus on your music as much as possible. It's just finding avenues like this where it's really a low effort, but it looks great, is a great way to give your fans a way to dive into your music taste and your genre, and just get to know more about you. And if you're not sure where to start, you can take inspiration from what's already on Deezer. So for instance, like playlists like this Dose playlist, you can get an idea of what's successful for them. You can see they have 1,000 fans, about 95 tracks. That's usually a good wheelhouse to be in, around 80 to 90 tracks for everything being listenable. You can even check in, we'll check into what other playlists they have. So let's see, they have other rap playlists. So for instance, on Dose, there wasn't a way to reach them. So you check out their other playlists and you can see here, they have follow Dose on their Instagram. So there you go. There's their Instagram handle. You can follow them there, hit them with a DM and let them know that you're releasing. You can link them to your song on Deezer or other streaming channels. And it's as easy as that. It's just 3 clicks and you've submitted your stuff to a playlist. So like I said, it's really fun. Deezer has a great interface for diving in and doing research for playlists. As you can imagine, there are millions of playlists out there. So when you're creating your playlist, try to be as original as possible with your playlist idea so that you can get noticed. Be creative with your title, create an original visual, even if it's basic. Your fans, new and old, will appreciate your unique artistic touch on your playlist. Again, back to kind of the lo-fi YouTube music videos. The same goes with lo-fi artwork, even album artwork. If it's just hand-drawn, sometimes that looks amazing. One of our recent Artists of the Month had a completely hand-drawn album artwork cover, and we shared it around the team because it was so simple and inspiring. So it's always cool to see ideas like that, and it's just a unique touch for independent artists as they're coming up in the scene to kind of let people know that they are lo-fi or producing music out of their bedroom, and it's kind of an aesthetic that people are rolling with, and it helps them promote themselves. So to that point, it's most important to have fun with it. So you can even reach out to the artists that you feature to cultivate a relationship. Again, I think you'd be surprised at how many artists are responsive when you reach out. And lastly, as we mentioned before, that quick rundown of our playlists, the things that we feature. Please, again, check out iMusician and make a bookmark of these things that you can do to make it easy to submit to playlists. This is a super brief rundown of everything that we could say on this topic, but really what it comes down to is doing your research. Companies like Deezer and companies like iMusician, we have our blogs dedicated to stuff like this and make it easy on artists, but it comes down to you and figuring out what works best for your genre and your taste and the people that are receptive to it and the relationships that you build. So again, we could talk about that all day. That unfortunately brings us to the end here. We ran through an hour pretty quickly, but again, we can open it up to some questions for everybody here. I'm sure people might have some as we breeze through a lot of topics, but
covered a lot in a short space of time.
Yeah. So yeah, drop them in the chat. If you're on Facebook, drop them in the comments. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Ruth.
No, I was going to say I can. There's a couple of questions here that I can pick up. I saw that Alice has already dropped some answers in as well. But Mario asked, can you pay to enter yourself onto playlists? The answer is no. There's absolutely no payment taken for any playlist additions. If anyone tells you that you can pay to get onto an editorial playlist at Deezer, and I assume is the same for all streaming services, that is not the case. The only way to pitch music is through our official communication, so through your distributor or your label, or through our management or label pitching forms as well. So from my opinion is do never pay to have your tracks featured on a playlist. So that's one.
Yeah, again, if you want to, if you're interested in checking out more on our blog, we just put out an article on the importance of not paying to get on playlists and how detrimental that can be. We can see that that is a very searchable topic for artists as people are desperate to get on playlists. Yeah, to Ruth's point, it's never worth it to do that as it ends up hurting you in the long run.
I can see there's another question about if you're a record label on Backstage, how do your artists invite you? So if you're a record label, there's an option to apply for access yourself. All you need to do is put in the label names that you distribute under and some UPCs, some details in there, and that will automatically match with our system and you'll have access to all of those artists. So it's not a case of an artist having their profile and inviting their label. The label can have their own separate access and see all the data for their artists.
Cool, nice one, great question there.
I've seen someone said, isn't funk a genre? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it definitely is. It's one of my favorites. So lots of funk and soul music to discover on Deezer. We've got a great editor called Yannick who curates some of the best funk playlists. So make sure you go and check those out.
Yes, Miguel, it is the same for Mexico in terms of getting yourself into playlists. It's the same submission process basically all around the world. So if you reach out to iMusician or SoundPlate or really any playlist curators, it's the same. Just send them an email, send them a DM. And yeah, I think, again, you'll be surprised at how many people get back to you, especially when you put together a big list for every release.
For sure, and we can take one more. Ali asks, how do you look for a record label on Deezer? I don't know exactly what you mean, but if a record label has their own playlists, those curator playlists that we mentioned, then you can just search the label name. Anything that is on the platform will come up. Otherwise, if you're looking for a specific artist on a label, I'd recommend just searching for the artist instead.
How long do playlists stay on Deezer from Natalie? Ruth, correct me if I'm wrong, but forever?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Like playlists don't usually get deleted once they're created. If the question is how long does a track stay on a playlist, that's slightly different. Some playlists are updated every week. Some playlists are updated every month. It really depends on the editor and on the genre and the type of playlist it is. Our new release playlists, for example, Brand New UK, is updated every Friday with the best of the new releases. So that really depends on which playlist you're looking at.
Cool. It looks like Maureen is producing jazzy soul music. Under which genre do you put that? I think you, if you're confused or don't have the ability, in iMusician, we have a huge array of genres that can describe your music. So I think there's something in there that would fall under the category of jazzy soul. I don't know if it would say exactly jazzy soul, but it would probably be R&B soul / jazz. So looking forward to hearing that music from you, Maureen. That sounds great.
I think that pretty much covers it.
Cool. So yeah, thanks everyone for being active in the chat and for the feedback. Always great to have a community of artists to interact with on these webinars. Before everyone goes, don't forget to bookmark our Deezer guide for artists and labels to refer back to it for help on customizing your page and your Deezer strategy. As we're going to be hosting more webinars moving forward, if everyone's still sticking around, I'd like to ask you if you would be interested in a webinar on Apple Music for artists, as well as a webinar on promotion. I'm going to drop another poll where you were dropping some answers there earlier. there those are. We'd appreciate your feedback all throughout this, but to close it out, I imagine we might have some yes answers on those. Yeah, super cool. So again, yeah, we're looking forward to doing more webinars as we move forward throughout the year, and it's clear that people are interested in diving into what these platforms have to offer. So again, check back on our Spotify for Artists webinar that's up on our YouTube channel. We'll share the link on that in our follow-up email, getting back to you after this webinar. And yeah, thanks. It looks like everybody's interested in more webinars on promotion and Apple Music. So we'll be sure to get those in the pipeline. And yeah, I guess on behalf of us, all of us here, I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar. This has been great. Wish we had more time. We could spend 3 hours going on over all these topics. It'd be exhausting. But hopefully you guys will join us in the future for more webinars on topics just like this. We hope you enjoyed it and are coming out of it feeling better about your releases, feeling better about how to get the most out of Deezer. And yeah, we'll be sending you a follow-up email that's going to be a recap, and we'll include the links that we shared so you can bookmark stuff moving forward. And yeah, I guess on that note, we look forward to seeing your music out in the world, and hopefully iMusician can play a part in distributing your music to Spotify, Deezer, and other platforms out there. So drop us a line if you have any questions, shoot us an email. We're here to help. And yeah, hope everyone has a great evening, and we'll see you in the next webinar. Thanks to Ruth again from Deezer for hopping on. Super happy to collab on this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Ciao.